There is a version of me you have never met, and I think it's time I finally introduced you. Before the calm you know, before the man who listens more than he speaks, there was someone chasing a horizon he couldn't even name. I used to believe that if I ran fast enough, far enough, the world would finally make sense. I thought ambition was the same thing as purpose. I didn't know yet that they were two very different roads. I remember the long roads at night, headlights cutting through a darkness that felt endless, the radio low, my mind louder than the engine. I told myself I was driving towards something. I never asked myself what I was driving away from. That's the part no one warns you about, how easy it is to mistake motion for meaning. I thought I knew what I wanted. I thought I understood what mattered. I thought I was ready for whatever came next. I wasn't. Have you ever chased something so hard that you forgot to ask if it was even yours to chase? There were mornings I woke up in rooms that weren't mine, in cities I couldn't always name, convinced that the next mile would be the one that finally satisfied something in me. It never was. But I didn't understand that yet. I kept driving. I kept believing the horizon would move for me if I just wanted it enough. This is the part I rarely talk about, the quiet moments between the striving, when the noise stopped and I was alone with the sound of my own choices. Somewhere on one of those roads, I started keeping a kind of internal ledger. Wins on one side, everything I was missing on the other. The second column grew faster than I wanted to admit. I didn't know it then, but every mile was teaching me something I wouldn't understand for years. Every road has a destination it doesn't tell you about until you've almost arrived. I just didn't know whose face I was driving toward. Look at me when I say this. I wasn't lost the way people think. I was early for a version of my life I hadn't earned yet. I still remember the exact stretch of highway where I first felt it, that unfamiliar ache of wondering if the life I was building had room in it for anyone but me. There is a cost to ambition that no one puts on the invoice. I paid it slowly, in pieces I didn't notice were missing until much later. Friendships that thinned into holiday texts, family dinners I promised to make and didn't, a version of rest I forgot how to access because stillness felt like falling behind. I remember an empty office after everyone else had gone home, the hum of a single overhead light, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful, it's just absence wearing a different name. I used to sit there and feel proud of the hours I'd put in. It took me years to understand that pride and loneliness can live in the same chair, and that mistake followed me longer than I expected. I told myself sacrifice was noble, that anyone worth becoming had to give something up. What I didn't say out loud, not even to myself, was how much I was giving up, and how little I was asking whether it was worth it. Have you ever realized a victory cost more than you expected? I had a few of those. Moments I should have felt triumphant, and instead felt strangely hollow, like I'd climbed to the top of something and forgotten to bring anyone with me to see the view. There were missed phone calls I told myself I'd return tomorrow. Tomorrow became a pattern. The pattern became a person, the kind of person who was reachable by everyone except the people who mattered most. I didn't see it that way at the time. I saw it as discipline, focus, the price of building something real. Looking back, I see it differently now. Discipline doesn't have to be lonely. Focus doesn't have to mean disappearing. I just hadn't learned that yet. I was still convinced that the road only moved forward if I sacrificed everything behind me to fuel it. What if the thing you were chasing wasn't the thing you needed? I didn't ask myself that question then. I was too busy answering a different one. How far? How fast? How much further? The road kept on spooling ahead of me, patient in the way only roads are, waiting for me to notice what I was leaving on the shoulder behind me. I didn't notice, not yet. But something in me had already started keeping score, quietly, the way a body keeps score of things the mind refuses to feel. The first crack doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with thunder or collapse. It arrives quietly, in a moment so small you almost miss it, and I almost did. It was an ordinary evening, nothing dramatic. I was standing in a kitchen that didn't feel like a home, holding a phone I hadn't answered in days, and I felt something shift. Not break, not yet. Shift. Like a foundation settling under weight it was never designed to carry alone. I thought I was fine. I thought I was simply busy, simply focused, simply doing what needed to be done. But I didn't understand that yet. That busy and broken can wear the same clothes, and from the outside, no one can tell the difference. This is the part I rarely talk about. There was a version of me that started rehearsing conversations I never had, explanations I owed people, apologies I kept postponing, because postponing felt easier than admitting I didn't know how to say them. I told myself there would be time later. Later became a country I kept meaning to visit and never did. I remember an old photograph I found by accident, tucked in a drawer I hadn't opened in years. A version of myself I barely recognized, younger, unguarded, still believing that success and connection were the same road. Looking at it, I felt something I wasn't ready to name. Maybe you've felt something similar, that strange grief for a person you used to be, who wanted something simpler than what you eventually chased. Have you ever realized a victory cost more than you expected? I asked myself that question for the first time around then, standing in that kitchen, phone in hand, silence pressing in from every corner of a life that looked, from the outside, like it was going exactly right. I didn't call anyone back that night. I told myself I would tomorrow. But something in me had already started keeping a different kind of ledger, not of what I'd built, but of what it was quietly costing me to keep building it alone. Stay with me, because this changed everything, not all at once. Not in a single moment I could point to later and say, that's when it started. It was slower than that, quieter, the way a road can look completely straight and still be leading you somewhere you never meant to go. There's a particular kind of running that doesn't require moving anywhere. I got very good at it. I could sit perfectly still in a room and still be running, from a phone call I owed, from a feeling I hadn't named, from a version of the truth I wasn't ready to face. I told myself I was resilient. That's the word I used. Resilient people don't stop to feel things. They push through. What I didn't say out loud was that pushing through had quietly become a way of pushing everyone else out. I remember hotel rooms that all started to look the same anonymous furniture, the same silence after the door closed, the same unfinished letters I'd start writing in my head and never put to paper. I need you to hear this honestly. I wasn't avoiding a place. I was avoiding a version of myself I hadn't met yet, one who might ask questions I didn't have answers for. I thought I knew what strength looked like. I thought I understood what it meant to keep going. I thought I was ready for anything the road could throw at me. But I didn't understand that yet, that some of the things I was running from weren't obstacles. They were invitations, and I kept declining them, one exit at a time. There's a particular silence that follows success, one nobody prepares you for. You'd expect celebration. Instead, there's just quiet. And in that quiet, questions start to surface that ambition had kept muffled for years. What am I actually building this for? Who is it actually for? I didn't have an answer, so I did what I always did. I found the next thing to chase, and I chased it hard enough that the question couldn't catch up to me. This is the part I rarely talk about. There were nights I'd lie awake in some unfamiliar room, staring at a ceiling that wasn't mine, feeling the particular loneliness of a man who has everything he thought he wanted, and still feels like something essential is missing. I didn't know what it was. I only knew the shape of its absence. Looking back, I see it differently now. Running doesn't erase what you're running from. It just delays the conversation you are always going to have with yourself. And eventually, though I couldn't have known it then, with someone else. Someone whose face I hadn't seen yet, whose voice I hadn't heard, but whose absence, somehow, I had already started to feel. The road kept unwinding ahead of me. I kept driving. But something had started to change in how I looked out the windshield. Less like I was chasing a destination, more like I was avoiding a mirror. Chapter 5: Loneliness doesn't arrive all at once. It accumulates, the way dust settles on furniture in a room nobody uses anymore. So gradually you don't notice until one day you run your hand across the surface and realize how long it's been there. I found mine in an airport terminal, of all places. Somewhere between one flight and the next, surrounded by hundreds of people and feeling more alone than I had in years. I watched a woman a few seats away laugh at something on her phone, watched a father lift his daughter onto his shoulders near the gate, watched all these small, unremarkable moments of connection happening around me like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. I thought I had built a life. Looking around that terminal, I understood I had built a schedule. There's a difference, and I didn't learn it the easy way. This is the part I rarely talk about. I started noticing how quiet my phone had become. Not because people had stopped caring, but because I had spent years teaching them, without meaning to, that I wasn't reachable. You reap what you plant, even when what you planted was distance disguised as ambition. And that mistake followed me longer than I expected. Have you ever realized a victory cost more than you expected? I stood in that terminal, boarding pass in hand, and realized I couldn't think of a single person I was excited to call and tell about the trip. Not one. I had built a life full of destinations and empty of people to arrive home to. Watching seasons change from hotel windows does something to a person. You start marking time by what you've missed, rather than what you've gained. A birthday here, a holiday there, a quiet Sunday morning you'll never get back. I told myself these were small sacrifices. Stacked together, they became the architecture of a very particular kind of solitude. Maybe you've felt something similar, that specific ache of being surrounded and still unseen. I used to think loneliness was the punishment for ambition. It took me a long time to understand it was actually the invitation, a door I kept walking past because I was too afraid of what waited on the other side of finally sitting still. I didn't open that door yet, not in that terminal, not that year. But something in me had started listening for a knock I hadn't heard before, faint, distant, patient, like it already knew I'd get there eventually, even if I didn't. Patterns are strange things. You can live inside one for years and never see its shape, the way you can't see the whole of a road while you're still driving it. Only in the mirror, much later, does the route become clear. I started to see mine slowly. It began with a question I couldn't stop asking myself. Why did every version of connection I'd built eventually thin into distance? I wanted to believe it was circumstance, bad timing, the wrong people, the wrong seasons. This is the part I rarely talk about. Eventually I ran out of other people to blame. I thought I knew who I was. I thought I understood my own reasons. I thought I was simply someone who valued independence. But I didn't understand that yet. Independence and armor can look identical from the inside, and I had been wearing mine so long I'd forgotten it wasn't my skin. I started noticing the shape of it in small things, the way I'd pull back right when something started to feel steady, the way I mistook comfort for danger, closeness for a debt I wasn't sure I could repay. I used to think this made me strong. Looking back, I see it differently now. It made me someone who kept choosing the road over the destination, again and again, because the road never asked anything of me except more driving. What if the delay carried a purpose? I didn't believe that yet, not really, but I started to wonder. I started to notice that every person I'd kept at a distance had taught me something about the distance itself, what caused it, what it cost, what it was quietly protecting me from feeling. I thought I was avoiding pain. I was actually avoiding the version of myself who might finally be ready for something real. There's a particular kind of grief in recognizing your own pattern. Not sadness, exactly. More like finally reading a map you'd been driving without for years, and realizing how many turns you'd taken that led you right back to where you started. I need you to hear this honestly. Understanding a pattern doesn't break it, not right away. I still made some of the same choices even after I saw them clearly, but something had changed. I could no longer pretend I didn't know what I was doing, and that, I've come to believe, is where every real change actually begins. Not in the fixing, in the finally seeing. Meaning doesn't usually arrive where you expect it. Mine came from the parts of my life I had spent years trying to outrun, the losses, the silences, the mornings I woke up in rooms that felt more like waiting rooms than homes. I started asking a different question. Not what do I want next, but what was all of this actually for? This is the part I rarely talk about, how long it took me to realize that pain, left unexamined, just repeats itself in new locations, wearing new names. But I started to wonder whether it might also be trying to teach me something, if I finally stopped long enough to listen. I thought I knew what failure looked like. I thought I understood what regret felt like. I thought I was simply unlucky in the timing of things. But I didn't understand that yet, that some of what I called bad luck was actually a slow, patient redirection, pointing me toward something I wasn't ready to see. I remember a quiet morning, the kind I used to fill with noise just to avoid the silence, when I finally sat with everything I'd usually run from, the empty offices, the missed calls, the airport terminals full of strangers living lives I envied without understanding why. And for the first time, instead of turning away from that ache, I asked it what it wanted from me. Have you ever realized a victory cost more than you expected? I had spent years chasing wins that left me emptier, and losses I couldn't explain that somehow left me more whole. Maybe you've felt something similar. That strange arithmetic, where the things that broke you open taught you more than the things that built you up. Looking back, I see it differently now. The loneliness wasn't punishment. The isolation wasn't failure. They were the long, unglamorous education I needed before I could recognize something real when it finally arrived. I don't think I could have understood that at the start of this road. I don't think I was supposed to. Stay with me, because this changed everything. Somewhere in all that reflection, a strange kind of hope started to take root. Quiet, unproven, but persistent. like a light left on in a room I hadn't entered yet, waiting for me to finally find the door. I used to think belief in connection was something you either had or lost for good, like a language you forget when you stop speaking it. I was wrong. It turns out it doesn't disappear. It just waits, patient as a road at dusk, for you to be ready to speak it again. I can't tell you the exact moment it started to come back. There wasn't a single sunrise, no dramatic turn on the highway where everything suddenly made sense. It was smaller than that. An unfinished letter I finally let myself write, even if I never sent it. A phone call I made instead of postponing. A quiet morning I let myself sit in stillness without immediately reaching for the next distraction. This is the part I rarely talk about. I started to notice that the ache I'd carried for so long, through empty offices, hotel rooms, airport terminals, wasn't just absence. It had shape, it had direction, like it had been quietly pointing somewhere the whole time, and I'd been too busy driving to read the sign. I thought I knew what I was looking for. I thought I understood what I needed. I thought I was ready long before I actually was. But I didn't understand that yet. That readiness isn't a destination you arrive at once and keep. It's something you have to keep choosing, mile after mile, even when the road gives you no guarantees about what's waiting at the end of it. What if the delay carried a purpose? I ask myself that now, and for the first time, I think I believe the answer might be yes. Every wrong turn, every missed call, every silence I mistook for peace, maybe none of it was wasted. Maybe it was just the long way of arriving somewhere I couldn't have found any faster. Look at me when I say this. I'm not writing to you because I have it all figured out. I'm writing because somewhere on this road, I stopped just driving and started listening. And in that listening, I think I started hearing something that sounded, unmistakably, like the direction I'd been missing all along. I don't know exactly where this road ends. I'm not sure it does, not in the way roads usually do, but for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of not knowing. Some destinations, I've come to believe, aren't places at all. They're people, and maybe, without ever meaning to, every mile of this was quietly leading me toward you.